Hey, it's Willie Crawford coming at you today with another Facebook Live. And today I'm going to be discussing with you my time management system, which I think a lot of you are going to find very different than the time management system of a lot of people. For example, instead of living by a to-do list, I actually keep a not to-do list, things that I don't want to find myself trapped into doing because they are counterproductive because they don't serve my purpose. And so, I won't show that to you now. I do keep notes on things I want to get done. If you were to see my monitor next to my on my one of my computers, I have three on my desktop right now. If you were to look at the monitor on my large screen monitor, you'd see a bunch of yellow stickies, and those stickies are things I don't want to forget, and so they're there, and they are sort of to-do things, so reminders. But I don't keep a to-do list. I live off of actually what I call the one thing, which is every day I pick one thing to do, and that one thing is the thing that will be my primary focus of that day, and everything else will be secondary. And that's not really the topic, the focus of today's Facebook Live, though. Today I want to, I'll just run down a list of notes I made, and we'll take it from there. And it is a time management system that has worked very well for me. Uh, let's see, it's a minute after the hour. I expect people to start joining me soon. I want to give a few people a chance to start joining me, but yeah, I'll give it another 20 seconds or so and then get into it, and that'll give me a chance to take a sip of water. Just giving people a chance to join me, and noticing that my lighting is not that great still. Uh, a lot of folks told me I needed to order a set of LED lights. I'm using the traditional studio lights, the large umbrella with a bunch of bulbs underneath it. And I was told I needed to get rid of those and get with the modern day system of lighting. And so I'm going to do that. And actually, I need some lighting behind me too, because my friend David Perdue taught me that to have a light behind you, you don't get the shadow on the wall. Although I need to put a banner on this wall anyway, which is ordered. Uh, with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? I've been into this for 2 minutes. Let me glance at my notes. You'll see me appearing to look down a lot. That's because I am reading my notes. And in the Facebook Live, I promised to teach you how I get more things done some days than many people get done in an entire month. And I actually do that. And my short answer is that I have extreme focus. I'll at times often turn off the phone. I'll disconnect from the internet. I'll ignore the doorbell, and I'll hang signs on my office door in my home, letting my wife or anyone else in the house know that I don't want to be disturbed for, say, the next hour. I chunk my time. I break my time into 15-minute increments, but for doing things where I just want to really, really concentrate on something, I break that into 1 hour increments. Just checking to make sure my phone is off, and it is, okay? And I don't let anyone disturb me, okay? That's the first thing I do. So I have that extreme focus. Secondly, um, I acknowledge that you don't really manage time. We each have the same number of seconds in a day. What you manage is how you use your time. And once you wrap your mind around that, it's about managing you, okay? Now, I do keep a schedule, and I use tools such as an online calendar where I allow clients to pencil themselves in. That calendar has very specific times that I want to take appointments, and so they pencil themselves in during the times I allocate. And normally, you have to schedule something at least two days in advance, so you can't schedule last-minute appointments with me. And I view these tools, though, as tools, not as dictators, not as things that run my schedule. So I do allow myself some flexibility in changing my schedule if it makes sense. For example, today's schedule bounced around a little, and that's because as I was working online, I was on Facebook, and Facebook rang, let me know that someone was trying to call me. I was doing something else with a client, so I didn't say to the client, I need to go take a call because that's more important than you. Instead, what I did was I finished with the client, and then I glanced at my Facebook to see my notifications and saw that it was someone that I actually wanted to talk to, because that person is someone who's one of his partners is doing over $1 million a week, and he and I are planning on doing a project together. So I thought, I may want to talk to him. So I talked to him, even though it was unscheduled, and it was a very productive call. But that call went longer than anticipated, and that caused me to shift around 3 or 4 things in my schedule. So again, my schedule is a tool. It's not something that dictates how I will use my time. Glancing back at my notes, again, I keep calendars and all those standard tools that everyone else keeps, but I don't let that drive me. Okay, I believe that you need to begin by identifying things in your life, both your personal and your business life, that are most important to you, and make doing those things a priority. And then you need to attach a strong reason why to guide you in making those things a priority. Examples are, one of my priorities is I make my kids and my grandkids and family members and friends a priority. So the things I do, like the amount of time I allocate to working, for example, is driven by making sure I have some time in my schedule for family and friends. Okay. The second thing is, as I plan on largely retiring in a year, I make doing things that set me up for that retirement a priority. So that's a big driver for me right now. And I'll explain some of that as we get into it. But, that's a priority. When I retire, I want to be able to live on my terms. And yet, actually, a lot of it will be focused on income. That's important. We live in a world that's driven by having sufficient money to do things. Even if you are focused mostly on charitable causes, if you have no money, the world's driven by money. So, like it or not, you still need income to make a big difference in the world. You can argue that point with me if you want to. Okay. And I want to give you, since I've emphasized having a strong reason why, I want to give you a tool that'll help you with that. And that tool is 2 free MP3 audios that you can download. They are absolutely free, but there is a catch, and that catch is you have to opt in to download them. And the reason I have that requirement is I didn't create these 2 MP3 audios I'm giving to you for free. One of my mentors, who taught me a lot of what I do about having extreme focus, he gave me the right to give these audios away or sell them. He gave me a license, and that license made the minimum cost I could charge being an opt-in. So you will have to opt in to a list in order to download these 2 free audios. And these audios teach you how to have extreme focus and to identify your reason why. Now, after you opt in, the only purpose in that list, if you want to call it a list, is to, from time to time, maybe tell you about other things that have to do with time management. I committed to not sending you anything other than something that has to do with time management. So you have no worry about having to join another list to get a freebie. And in fact, if you want to, you opt in, and as soon as you download the freebie, you can opt out. It's just that I have to comply with the other person's license. And so that's what I'm doing. And I see you folks joining me now. I see Brian McLaughlin's joined us, Joel Orlando, Sue Painter, my brother-in-law, Jog Australia, who's at Gitmo right now, I think, and Dennis Gaskell. Thank all you folks for joining me. And again, today, my topic is time management. And I began by saying you don't really manage time. We all have the same number of seconds in a day and all that stuff. What you do is you manage yourself and how you use that time. And I went on to say that I focus on what my strong reason is, my strong reason why for doing the things I do and what I want to get done. And I live by having one thing that I want to accomplish that day, and I focus on that above all else. A lot of times will tell myself I'm not going to bed at night. I'm not going to let my head hit the pillow until I finish that one thing that I said was my top priority for that day. Now, a lot of you who interact with me on a regular basis, you'll grow during this session to understand why I do things the way I do. For example, I tell a lot of people it's better to contact me via email, although I use Facebook Messenger more than I do email. But the reason I say email is best to contact me is if you notice me on Facebook Messenger, I'm probably coordinating on a project that I want to get moved forward. And so even though you notice me on Facebook Messenger, uh, there's a possibility that I'm not going to respond right away because that's going to throw me off of my schedule. So that's why I say, please contact me on email. And there are times I set aside, I have very specific times I set aside for responding to messages, okay? So the other thing that I want to emphasize is that if you want to manage your time and set your own priorities, you cannot let other people's priorities become your priorities. That's something you have to guard against. It's very easy to take on other people's projects, and before you know it, you don't get anything done that you wanted to get done, and you actually develop resentments from that. You're saying, man, I shouldn't have volunteered to do this. And all of a sudden, you're doing someone else's project. When I was in the Air Force, I was working on a project, and I had this lieutenant colonel walk up to me, and he said, "What are you doing, Willie?" And I told him I was working on something to help someone else in another division. I didn't even work for them. And he said, "Willie," he said, "don't do that." And I said, "Why? I understand the topic better than he does." And he says, "Willie, in life, there will always be people who will come to you with a monkey on their back. And there's nothing they would like better than to take the monkey off their back and put it on your back." And so, the message that I picked up from that was, don't assume responsibility for other people's problems most of the time. I mean, it's nice to help people out, but I've discovered over time that, you're going to develop a lot of resentments if other people come to you and you just take on their problems. You can't take on the world's problems, okay? So don't let people take the monkey off their back and put it on your back. And so you have to establish priorities. And again, I emphasize a strong reason why that you have those priorities in order not to let other people's priorities become your properties, okay? You also need to establish firm boundaries. This is my time management system, but it's a set of rules I live by, really more than, okay, step one, step two, step three, or I do this first thing in the morning and this second thing in the morning. That's not the way I operate. You have to establish firm boundaries, and you have to make them known and then enforce them. So an example is I typically only check email at certain times. I have times that I've identified as my less productive times for getting things that require a lot of concentration. That's when I tend to check email. Okay, and I even outsource some email tasks. I explained that in a Facebook Live that was, I think, back on the 12th, maybe the 13th. I'll give you the link to that Facebook Live if you want to tune into it. But what happened was my buddy, Yaro Starek, who's an old friend, he came to me and he said, "Willie," he said, "I haven't looked at my inbox, one of my inboxes, my primary inbox, in 12 years. And I'm like, "How do you do that?" And he explained it to me. And he said, "Would you like for me to do a Facebook Live with you or something where I share with your audience how I do that?" And I said, "Sure." So if you didn't catch that Facebook Live, which again, I think was on the 12th, you can go back and catch that now or at your convenience. It's semi-timeline, but I just gave you the link to it. But Yaro doesn't check his email all the time, and he outsources most of his email and explains how he does that very effectively, okay? The other thing you need to do is you need to limit your time on social media. Most of us, most of the Western world at least, spend far too much time on Facebook and on Instagram and on Pinterest and on Twitter, and we tell ourselves, a lot of us, that we're working. Again, I use Facebook Messenger a lot more than I use email, but when I'm on Facebook, I'm very focused and I'm dealing with very specific issues that I often logged into Facebook to deal with. And so if I logged into Facebook to deal with a specific issue, i.e. to coordinate with someone on a project, to update someone on a project or whatever, I'm not going to let anything pull me away from that one purpose that I logged in. So again, just because you see me on Facebook doesn't mean I'm going to respond right away. But see, the boundary I've set is that I've let my clients know and my students uh, know that that's a boundary, that, at times I'm not going to respond. And I have time set aside that I'll work with them on certain issues, but just because you see me on Facebook does not mean that I'm available, okay? And I had one friend who said, oh, well, why don't you, send a quick message saying, I'm tied up right now, I'll get back to you later. That often will pull you into conversations. What I've noticed is that even when you tell people, I could say to someone, oh, I've got a Facebook Live, or I have a scheduled conference call or something in 5 or 10 minutes. What I've noticed is that very often those people will say, okay, and they will continue the conversation. They won't break it off so that you can jump on that webinar that you had, or something else you had scheduled. So I personally don't say, oh, I've got something else. And if I'm working on something, I focus on that one thing and I'll get back to the other person later. And so again, I make that boundary known. And another thing is I resist when I notice emails coming in, like I mentioned Yaro in his conversation. He talks about the fact that we both, even though we don't answer a lot of our emails, we have an email assistant who handles that for us. We get notified of a lot of emails, like on our cell phones or whatever, and we can glance at them from time to time. And you notice something that only you can handle, you jump on it, but otherwise you don't. And there we have to resist the temptation of, oh, this will only take a quick minute to respond to, because what happens then is you respond, and as soon as the other person notices a response, they feel an obligation to get back to you, and then you get the response back, and before you know it, what was a quick reply turns into a conversation that's 20 or 30 minutes long, and your whole day is thrown off. And so it takes a lot of discipline, but I personally try not to respond to Facebook messenger messages, or emails, except for times I've allocated for that. Usually, I mean, there's times when I log into Facebook because it's a less productive time, and I'll spend a lot of time just responding to people's posts to my walls and things like that. But it's planned. It's not something that'll throw me off of my schedule. Okay, that's my point there. And speaking of schedules, there's a lot of gurus out there right now teaching that Facebook and social media in general is a waste of time anyway, and that content marketing is somehow dead. Content marketing is not dead. People like receiving useful content from you. The thing is, again, you need to schedule even your content marketing. And my friend David Perdue has a bunch of checklists and some software and all kinds of things that he gives out, or he doesn't give out, he offers. It's a training called Daily Content Profits. So it's a bundle of checklists, and it's some software tools he uses that basically cuts down on the amount of time that he and his team spend posting to social media. And so David makes money practically every day from making sales via social media, as do I and a lot of others. But we don't make posting that content out there. And the content has to deliver a lot of value, first of all. So you're teaching people things that deliver value into their lives, but you can't let that consume all your time. And so I personally follow David's checklist, and I use a lot of the same tools he used. And so I dropped the link to David's content marketing system. If you want to check that out, you don't have to, but it'll save you a lot of time. It'll help you to get organized. It's about organization. You could spend all day posting to, Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and all those. And speaking of content marketing, a lot of times I'll write an article and I'll share it via my newsletter, and my newsletter will post automatically to Facebook on certain places, and to Twitter and a few other places. And I may go over to LinkedIn and post it as, what is it called? It's like an article. And I'll post a graphic and all those things, and I'll share it a number of places, but that's all planned out and I post it in a way that is the preferred way that you post to those platforms. And that's all just, it's all planned out, even like tweets and things like that. They appear maybe to be random, but they're not. They're with a purpose that don't have me spending hours and hours and hours on Twitter. I don't. But when I'm there, it's very productive. And so check out David's daily content profit system, if you will. Okay. Now, there, it's all about acknowledging it. People get on social media and a lot of other places, and they're often looking for information. So the content marketing is delivering real value into people's lives before you ask them to buy anything. And that's the important part is content marketing works, but it is a lot of work. It can be a lot of work at the same time, so you need to be organized. Now, let's look at how I frame time management so that I don't waste a lot of time. Okay, first thing that I believe you need to do is you need to sort of have an idea of what an hour of your time is worth. Okay, uh, you know, you need to actually calculate an hourly rate that you think your time is worth. And the way I do that, and the way a lot of people teach you to do that, is to look at the lifestyle that you want to live and ask yourself, how much money is it going to take to live that lifestyle? People who do traditional investing, they, say, okay, if I set aside so much money during my working life, when I retire, I'll have enough to have a certain lifestyle. There have been so many changes in the world in recent years that people like Robert Kiyosaki is teaching, you don't save for retirement now. You acknowledge that the government's spending money faster than you can save it anyway. So he teaches, instead, build assets that will give you money at a faster pace than the government's going to take it from you with taxation and things like that. And I agree with Kiyosaki on that. So what I believe you should do is build assets. Like I mentioned in one of my webinars, me building out rank and rent websites. Those sites will pay me rent month after month after month. And so it's their assets. And I have certain income goals, and those income goals are to allow me to live the lifestyle I want. And a lot of that lifestyle, though, is actually giving to charities, charitable causes, and things that I want to do that I see as spreading good in the world. Okay. Now, so I have a certain income level I want, and let me get back to my notes, because I mentioned that you need to know how much money you need to live the lifestyle that you want. And once you decide how much money it's going to take, and me, I look at the fact that taxes, based on how I do tax planning and asset protection, taxes are going to take up roughly a third of what I have coming in. Okay, because I do a lot of tax planning and things like that. I have people I consult with all the time, and so a lot of the things that I grow are in tax preferred or tax deferred assets. Okay, so you decide how much money you need, and then you decide how many hours per week you're willing to put in working towards that income or lifestyle goal, and that's a number that we'll sort of set aside for right now. But what you want to do, though, is you want to decide roughly how many days per year you want to spend living your life. And so you say, okay, I'm not going to work 24/7 at this job. And hi, Michelle, it's good to have you joining us. Instead, you say, I'd like to take some vacations. Us Americans, we take far too few vacations. I just turned 60. I've got a 30-day vacation plan soon. And then I have another vacation that'll probably be 15 to 20 days planned. And so I plan vacations, and I don't plan on, well, I plan on semi-retiring, but in semi-retirement, I'll still get on the internet when I want to, because even if I'm sitting at somebody's house or at a party, chances are the majority of people at the party are on their phones and taking pictures and tweeting and sending them on Facebook and things like that anyway. So that's not a big deal. But I personally say I want to spend these many days on vacation, and I want to I want to plan on attending things like birthday parties, class reunions, family reunions. And I know I have a lot of friends who have birthday parties, every year, and so I plan those things, and I say, okay, I've got 365 days in a typical year, and out of those 365 days, I look at how many days of vacation I want, and I look at the fact that I probably don't want to work 7 days a week. So let's say you work a typical of 5 days a week. Okay, if you don't work on weekends, you take that, you've got 52 weeks. So right there is 52 times two, or 104 days pulled out of your year. And if you look at the fact that the typical person works, 40 hours a week or whatever, if you crunch your numbers, you're going to be down to, and you give yourself time for vacations, you're probably going to be down to below 200 uh, days per year, you know. And so, hi, Paul, it's good to have Paul Guyon joining us. So you can continue crunching the numbers and see, okay, how much money do I need to make per hour to meet my lifestyle goals? Okay, and I did some rough numbers just for the heck of it. If you were to set, say, your annual income goal at $100,000 a year, okay, and you said, out of that, I'm going to take weekends off, and I'm going to spend, I don't know, maybe another 60 days uh, on vacation and at birthday parties and things like that. You're down to 201 working days in a year, okay? Now, let's assume that for each of these working days that you're actually putting in 8 hours per day. If you were to take the 201 days and multiply it by 8 productive hours per day, you'd get 1,608 productive hours per year. That's giving you time off for vacation and for, time with the family, to go to birthday parties and all those things like that, and vacation, just using my example. And so, okay, so you're down, you're working, what was my number again? Let me find my notes. Take me just a minute. I'm jumping around a little. Okay, so we're working 1,608 hours a year. Okay, if your goal is $100,000 for that year, then you need to earn $62.19 per hour. Okay, now if we're honest with ourselves, if you're working an office job, I can tell you that if you're working 8 hours a day, you're not even working 3 hours of that productively. You're spending a lot of time taking smoke breaks. If you're a smoker, you're spending a lot of time standing around a water fountain, meandering around the office and talking to your coworkers. You're spending a lot of time, probably, if no one's watching, surfing the internet. And so most of your hours aren't productive, whether you admit that or not. We're all too easily distracted. There's so many distractions in our day. So what I do is I say, okay, if you're working 8 hours a day, I'd say less than half of it's productive. So in order to hit that $62.19 per hour average for the 8 hour day, you actually need to make each of your hours worth twice that, or $124.38 per hour. Okay. And that's a lofty goal. Very few of us, if we work regular jobs, are going to earn $100 per hour, over $100 per hour, but that is, what your time, what you need to think your time is worth. If you want to just make $100,000 per year, I say just, because my goals are much loftier, and I don't need that amount of money to live the lifestyle I really want as far as personal creature comforts. But there's a lot of things I want to do that I consider good, contributing good to the world. I mean, I care about feeding the hungry. I care about research for certain medical problems. I care about finding a cure for cancer and things like that. Helping kids to break out of the cycle of poverty. A lot of things I care about, and so I want to make more money so I can give more money to things I care about, basically. So let's say we increase our income goal from 100,000 a year to 1 million a year. Remember now, I'm still giving a third of that away to the government in taxes, even with good tax planning. Okay, so now instead of needing $124.38 per hour, you need to earn $1,243.80 per hour. And actually, my numbers are higher than that because of goals I have, and things, little things that I want to do. Like, I don't want my grandchildren to have to worry about money. So I'm establishing trust for them. I don't want, my mother died back in April, and I thought it'd be neat to set up a scholarship fund in her name, in her memory. So that's another project I want to fund, and I don't want to run the scholarship fund. I want to turn next management over to someone else so that my prejudices or whatever don't come into play. But I established the rules for it before handing it over to someone else. But so I want to give money for those purposes. I look at one of the problems with that millennials face right now is a lot of them are spending so much money on college expenses that when they get out of college, they're saddled with this huge debt that they'll never, ever, ever be able to pay off just because of the way the economics works out. And so a lot of them don't even envision paying off their college debts. They live from day to day, and they plan actually on at some point now filing bankruptcy for that very reason. And so, I want to break out of that prison, if you will, and that's something I very much care about because I've studied the problem. It's not just in the U.S. It's in a lot of countries that kids are trapped where a lot of them, if they're working part-time jobs trying to make it through school, they don't even make enough money to live on. And so they end up doing things like taking payday loans, which is a totally losing proposition. And now they're working, and when they get paid, they have to pay their loan, and so they don't have money left to live on. It's a vicious cycle that I've studied and I know about. And so I want to make a lot of money, not my personal creature comforts per se. I do want to take vacations and things like that, enjoy life, but I want to be able to do good. And so I personally, when I do my calculations, I need to say, okay, my working time, my productive time is worth, let's say, over $1,500 an hour. Okay, that's the value that I place on my time right now. So when I say to somebody, go to my calendar and book a time for me, or I can't talk to you right now, but here are the times I have available. I have to stick with that because I've identified the times in my day that are the most productive. And it's those times that I spend on tasks I really need to concentrate on. And some of those tasks may be writing, something I enjoy doing, but it's some things only I can do. I could outsource ghostwriting to someone, but certain writing only I can do, and there's other things that only I can do. But most of what I do is working on my business rather than in my business. So I outsource a lot of things. That's the thought process that I want to and encourage you to adapt. The time management system is not, first thing in the morning I do this and I do that and then I do that. I don't want you to adopt that. I want you to adopt, okay, I ask myself, what is the most important thing that I need to get done today and that I commit to doing today, or at least working on it if I can't finish it in a day, and then not letting anything distract you from that. That's not time management per se, it's you management, okay? And, a lot of what I do is driven by my inspiration. One of my inspirations is Dan Kennedy, who will actually be attending an event I'll be at later in the month. And he's actually in hospice right now. He was not doing very well at one time, but now he seems to be improving, so he may be there. But he's receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, am I, for my work in teaching people how to actually make a living online. But Dan and his business partner, Lee Miltier, they've written books and done cassette programs and all kinds of things on time management. And their thing is, if I can hire someone to do something for less than X number of dollars per hour, then I won't do it. Now, Lee takes it to the extreme. Lee says, I don't even do my own grocery shopping. She said, why would I spend an hour walking around a supermarket looking for things when I could hire some high school kid to go out with a list and buy these things for me? And why would I spend time, doing my lawn or doing this or doing that, doing my laundry, when I could hire someone to do those things for me for, $25 an hour or less, because she's looking at her time and saying, based on what she does for a living, her time's worth well over $2,000 an hour. And Dan has one book called Marketing to the Affluent, and he's got another one. It's a time management book, and he talks about the fact that there are people, affluent people, who don't even change the light bulbs in their house or check for, damage around the roof and stuff like that. They have people who come over every so often and do those things for them, or cook the meals for them and things like that. So that's the mindset that I want to get you into, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and wrap up in a minute. I'm just looking at my notes. That's why I'm looking down so much. I see that Jean Pimentel has joined us, and I welcome Jean. I mentioned that I'm building rank and rent websites as a way to have that income coming in after I retire, semi-retire, largely retire. I'm using things I learned from Jean on domaining in general, either buying websites and quick turning them for a profit, but anywhere from 10 to 100 times what I spent on the domain name, or building out websites that I can turn around and rent to businesses, mostly brick and mortar businesses, and they pay me a monthly rent. Okay, and I mentioned Robert Kiyosaki, who says, "Don't spend all your time, struggling and trying to save up money. Instead, spend your time building assets." And Kiyosaki is the one who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He said, you're better off spending it, well, first of all, because what was it? It was in 74 that President Nixon took us off the gold standard. Part of that was because we were financing the Vietnam War. I guess that was 71. And we didn't have enough money. So we said, well, if we don't tie our money to the amount of gold that we're required to keep in reserve, we can just print as much money as we want and we'll never run out. So we came off the gold standard. And at that point, there was nothing, absolutely nothing back in the American dollar, except for the faith of the American people in its government. And because most other countries in the world pegged their currency to the US dollar, there's nothing back in most other currencies in the world except the faith and confidence of the people. And most don't realize that. So your dollar, your paper dollar, is really worth nothing. And your digital dollars, because most money, most currency is just ones and zeros in a computer database somewhere. That's why we use our debit cards and all those things. We don't carry. A lot of places people don't even carry money anymore. They just scan their phone or whatever. And so money's not real. Once you understand that, you understand a lot of things about the world. And I've gotten off topic. I'll close with just two things. One is I emphasize that you need to know the value of your time. One thing that a lot of us trick ourselves into is we say, well, I'm multitasking, so I can focus on the thing that I told myself I needed to get done right now, but I can also look at other things. I can multitask. Well, I've had proven to me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the human mind can only focus on one thing at a time. We cannot multitask. That's a physical impossibility. What the human mind does is it rapidly shifts between things. So you're focusing on three different things at a time. You're focusing on this, and then you're shifting to this, and you're shifting this, and you're shifting back. You're just constantly doing that, though. And you can do that so fast that it seems like you're focused on one thing. But if you've ever, like me, been on Facebook Messenger and you're talking to somebody, you every now and then will post the wrong message in the wrong window, and it's because multitasking is not a possibility, and it's hard to keep things straight. So forget the thought that you multitask. Again, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, but listen to it again if you want to. If you found value in it, please share it with your Facebook friends and followers. If you didn't find any value in it, of course, don't share it. I mean, I want to give you share-worthy content. But my system, for those of you joining us later or listening in later, is basically identifying the one thing I want to get done that day, or the one thing I am going to work on that day, and I'm going to be so rigid on that that I'm going to shut most other things out. And I dropped the link to a two-set MP3 audio that you can download. It's two audios rather, and I did give you a link that is to an opt-in form. It's an Aweber opt-in form. There's nothing on the page except for an opt-in form. And when you fill that out, you will be on an autoresponder, but my only purpose in having that autoresponder is because two purposes. But the primary thing is the person who recorded that audio, their license required that I, at a minimum, charge an email address. And so I can't give it away, but there's nothing to stop you from subscribing to autoresponder. And as soon as you download the MP3 audios, unsubscribing. I would hope you wouldn't, because if I come across other things pertaining to time management that I think will benefit you, I'll certainly send those along, but I don't plan on using that autoresponder for anything else. So with that, I am going to go ahead and wrap it up. I see one other person, Jeff Alexander, join us. I thank you for joining us, Jeff. And if you guys have any questions or comments, you can post them in the window here. If we are Facebook friends, and you can also send me a Facebook message. I do respond to those, but again, I don't spend all day sitting on Facebook Messenger. And if I am working on something else, my extreme focus tells me to finish what I've just established as the priority and then get back to you. And I mentioned, today I was on Facebook and somebody called me over Facebook. So it rings, and I ignored it because I was trying to finish something else that was time sensitive. And then after I finished it, I looked at who called me, and I said, okay, I need to call this person back because, again, they were working on a project that's bringing in millions and millions of dollars, and I know they wanted to work on something with me. So that was somebody I wanted to talk with, and that was worth me, because I don't let my time management tools be my master, but tools instead. I give myself permission to change my schedule, and you should too. That's how I do time management. I hope that you found that helpful. Thanks again for tuning in. And I do plan another Facebook Live tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see how that goes. Today didn't work out quite that way. And so I hope you'll plan. I give you the time because I hope you plan on tuning in, and I hope to deliver something of value to you. I haven't locked down the topic yet for tomorrow. So if you want to suggest a topic to me, I've got 23 years of business running an online business, 23 years of experience running an online business. But I've run businesses since I was like a small child. I had my own mail order business at 14 years old, my own bulk mailing stuff out to people. So I've run a business all my life. Anyway, with that, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.